Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Of course, I wish we could all be in person, but we have to overcome and adapt, don't we? And just like in real estate, just like in real estate notes and life and everything else, that's what we have to do. So it's a pleasure to be here. And hopefully next year we can all get together again and continue to grow with Noteworthy. I know it's going to be a great event for you. There's a lot of great speakers, a lot of good information that shall be shared over the course of these few days here. So thanks once again. And I think most everybody's familiar with my background and biography, and thank you for having that in the introduction and such. So what I have done for the last 3 years at the, last three events, I should say, at the Noteworthy Convention is delivered the State of the Industry Address. And in reality, I've been doing State of the Industry Addresses for over 10 years now, probably closer to 12 years. And I do that because I'm a researcher. I study the market. I like to call myself a student of the marketplace. I really started getting into that after the first real estate crash, where it happened so quickly. It happened without the warning of as severe it would be, and many investors, I would say, dare to say almost all investors who were invested full-time in real estate took a hit. And as a result of that, I started to reflect back and I said, gee, you know what? There were signs, there were indicators, and you should have started to hedge your bet a little bit more. So since that time, I became a student in the marketplace, and I've been writing industry addresses. I've delivered some of them I've written for other people. And quite frankly, a lot of other people within the industry rely upon my research and data to put together their own form of presentations when it comes to what's going on in the industry. Over that period of time, I've done my share of predicting and projecting what's going to happen based upon known facts and trends. And you can do that in fairly normal times. In fact, my predictions were pretty well spot on. I don't think I missed out on too many things that I projected and predicted that didn't come true. And in previous State of the Industry addresses, I would give my projections and what to do and what's most likely to happen. Well, this time it's different. It's very different right now. In fact, I really think anybody who is giving specific projections and teaching specific things for what's going to happen in the future after we come out of this environment that is all-encompassing, what's going to happen to the real estate market, what's going to happen to the note market, and there have been some wild projections about that, what that's going to be. There's been a lot of opinions out there. I believe this. I don't think anybody knows. And the reason I say that is based on my background in researching and what I can see in the data that I have, there's too much. There's too much going on. We're still in this pandemic. We still have new legislation that is enabling people not to make payments on their loans, not to make rent. There's forbearance agreements, but yet we have such a divided political theater today where it doesn't seem that anything's going to get passed unless everything's lumped in, and it's just crazy when you add those things together, the new legislations, the constant pumping of money into the economy, which certainly is changing things as well. And then you look on the other side where property sales are still going, property values are still going up nationwide. There's so much information. It's difficult, if not impossible, to say here's what's going to happen. Nobody really knows. There's not a single industry expert that knows, is this going to all come crashing down? If so, when? And is it going to have a soft landing, or is it going to come with a thud that was bigger than the last crash that we had? So as I started to put this together and decide about what to talk about, I'm doing this one a little bit differently. Well, we're in different times. So I am going to lay out some of the facts that are going on in the industry. And I also, though, want to make this actionable for you. I want you to take away something that says, here's what I need to focus on right now. In fact, part of my theme on this entire presentation is because of all the chaos and all the various areas that we could talk about, let's focus on what we know. Forget about all the other noise going on around us. Let's focus on what we know. And if we can focus on what we know, we can prepare for the eventual outcomes. We won't know the scale. We won't know how it's weighted to certain strategies or techniques or another. We won't know that. But if we focus on what we know, if we put together actionable plans based upon that, we shall be prepared for no matter what outcome that we have. And let's face it, there can be multiple outcomes. The government can change laws and rules like that, and it instantly changes everything. We saw that with the forbearances. We saw that with foreclosures. We saw that with evictions. The courts, local state governments have a lot of say as well. Are they going to open up the court for foreclosures, evictions, and get back to some sense of normalcy? Or are we developing patterns within people to just get away with not paying for as long as you can? Or are people going to immediately come back? Right? There's a lot of things that we need to think of in the industry that we are in, which is real estate. Right? I'm a specialist in real estate, and a good portion of that is real estate notes. That is a part of the real estate umbrella. It's the same side, or excuse me, a different side of the same coin. And I've always taken that position here. In my #1 bestseller back in 2019, I talked about some likely things that are happening before all of this. Some of those are now coming into mainstream techniques. That's good to know. Facts were starting to line up, but there's just too many other things, too much other noise out there. So 3 things that I believe note investors should do right now would be a good subtitle to this state of the industry. So there's so many different things, and I wanted to focus it down to the top 3 areas. And I believe as we go through this, logically, you will come to the same conclusion and be able to take some actionable steps around that. Okay, so with all of these projections, again, when you look at all of these variables, and I just listed a handful of them here, how are you supposed to navigate all of this? And the real, again, conclusion is we can't do any of that because of all these areas here. So just again to list a few: COVID-19, the federal government, their spending, their other interjections, state government interjections as far as laws, rules, regulations, employment, unemployment, corporate bankruptcies are up. Obviously, urban flight, people now saying, oh, we don't have to go to the office. We can live anywhere, are starting to move. That's going to shift things. Changing workplace, in other words. When will we be able to start the economy? Of course, the politics of everything going on in the world. We can't ignore those things. So focus on what we do know. Here's the first one. Loan modifications, forbearances, foreclosures, and bankruptcies are highly likely to be a part of the outcome of the current market condition. I don't think that's disputable. I really don't. Forbearances are a part of a loan modification. It's misunderstood by the general public. Why would they have an understanding of that if they're not in this industry? That's starting to change. Foreclosures, there's been changes there. Bankruptcies, we'll talk about that as well. So if we know that this is going to be a big part of the outcome of this current market, doesn't it make sense then that we start to study these things? If we're lacking in education in any of these areas, if we don't have the knowledge background in certain things, this is a great time to learn and study those. Now, how did I come up with this conclusion of this is what we know? Let's go through that. We'll come back and revisit each one of these topics here. So based upon research by CoreLogic, and I'll state my sources as we go through, as well as I always do. Back in April 2020, the current to 30 days on borrowers being behind, I should phrase this whole thing with that. This is showing late payments, okay? Borrowers being behind on payments. So in April 2020, the current to 30-day late, just that short window there of just up to 30 days late, went to 3.4%. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot. It only went up 3.4%. But as I've noted there, that is the highest rate since 1999. So it is a significant move. Now, this was in April, right? So everything started to go a little haywire in February, March, and in April, we started to see some of this movement that's going on in the current to 30 days. Now, current to 30 days is really just considered late, right? It's not a loan that's going into default. It's a delinquency, but it's just simply late. And there's a high probability that most people would catch up on this. Okay, what else do we know? Black Knight Financial Services. They come out with their monthly mortgage monitor every month, and this is in June. So April, May, June, moving forward 2 months. The 30 days or more indicator is now at 7.59%. Once again, okay, it looks like a relatively small move. And what was interesting about this one is 2.25% month over month change. It actually got better. Okay, from May to June, it got better in that month. But when you take a look at what has happened over a year-to-year change, you're looking at 103.55% increase from June 2019. Okay, so you're starting to see then this trickle effect of this, the 0 to 30 days starts to go up, the highest it's been in 1999. And then we see the 32 days or more delinquencies go up a couple months later by 100% over year to year. It's showing that we're starting to have a pattern here. So this is all known data. This is something that they track in arrears, right? This data, the report came out in August, and it's or July, August, and it's reporting back several months. So we know this information to be true here. Further, in this same report, total U.S. foreclosure starts were down by 85% year over year. They happen to be up by 15% month over month. But still, that is a relatively small number. When you look over the charts over here, foreclosures kind of steady and then just dropped off. Now, again, part of this is because forbearance agreements and everything are in place. They've delayed foreclosures through courthouses. They put a mandate on federally backed loans for foreclosures. So that would be normal and expected. Right? But there it is, down 85%. We also see that foreclosure sales as a percentage of these 90-day or late. So there's a pattern here within the industry, or a verbiage within the industry, I should say, where somebody is late on their payments, 0 to 30 days. 30 days or more becomes delinquent, and after 90 days, it's in default. Okay, it's in default. So foreclosure sales as a percentage of those 90-day or late payers, you can see that that is just a small fraction of the overall industry, and it's down 46% month over month, and excuse me, year over year, again, almost 100%. So we're starting to see the beginning here of the growing number of delinquencies. But here's the weird thing. The way these numbers are reported, and this is very important, the way these numbers are reported, people in forbearance are still considered paying. They're not considered delinquent. So when you look at these numbers, these are the ones outside of that realm. And there's over 4 million people that are in forbearance plans that are still considered to be actively paying. They're not included in these numbers. What's going to happen? Are they going to continue to pay after their forbearance period is over, or are they going to extend that? Did you know they can now extend that to 12 months? It started as 90 days. Now they can file again for another 90 days, until they're up to 12 months. Now that may soften the landing as things start to unfold, but at some point, the bell tolls. They've got to catch up on those. There's a lot of ignorance around forbearance and what that means and what people can do. Some people think it's a grant. They just never have to pay that back. That is simply not the case. They're going to have to pay those missed payments back. Now, when is a different story. Depends upon the plan that they're in. Believe it or not, some people didn't know about this, and their plan is they have to pay it back in lump sum once they start making payments again. Other people will have it tacked to the end of the loan. Still others will have it smoothed out over the remaining life of the loan. So there's still adjustments that are going to have to be made, but those folks are not included in these numbers. Okay, so another way of looking at that, when you look at this table here, which is from calculated risk, mortgage delinquencies and foreclosures by period past due, all loans. And the chart goes from 2002 up to 2020. You've got the foreclosure process in red, the 90-day delinquencies in yellow, and the 30 to 60 days. I'm sorry, the 90-day defaults and the 30 to 60-day delinquencies, which are in blue. So we've seen hovering around 4% on the 30 to 60-day loans, that percentage of loans that are delinquent. Of course, that went up in 2009, and the 30 to 60s were coming up to about 6%. They started to drop down again. They got below, sorry about that, they got below the 4% mark here, but now you can see the trend is upward. And it's been that way in the second quarter here of 2020. What's really grown is this 90-day number as well. So we've got 0 to 30 days growing in late payments. We've got the 30 to 90-day period of time. 30 to 60 is how they mark them. So 30 to 60-day delinquencies going up, and we have the default, the 90 days and more, going up as well. So eventually that just kind of all pushes down the road. The 0 to 30 have a high percentage that are able to catch back up. But once a loan gets to that 90 days, it's very difficult for people without assistance from the lender to catch up. Okay, that's why they look at those as defaulted. But you can see the foreclosure process is a much smaller number here because they're not foreclosing on most properties now, which probably will be the trend. Okay, now this was a projection by Moody's, and Moody's, if you've been around the industry a while, if you have watched The Big Short, Moody's was mentioned there. Moody's rates bonds and the risk in bonds. And Moody's was a big part of the last crash because they were taking these ridiculously underwritten mortgages that were essentially garbage, you know, the stated income, no dot kind of stuff, and they were rating them AAA, and they were packaged and sold. Okay, but Moody's is still around and doing that same business, and they do have economists and everything else. Now, their economists projected that now again, there was a big if this pandemic continues on through November, December, then we could see delinquencies as a percentage of all mortgages go all the way up to 30%. That is a scary number. Now, this is a big projection here, and they did offset it with a if this goes on, but so far, still kind of going on, right? So delinquencies as a percentage of mortgages, to put this in proper perspective, during the last crash, the delinquency rate peaked right here. Okay, 2009, 2010, it peaked at 10% of all mortgages. It peaked at 10%. Can you imagine it going all the way up to 30% and what's going to happen? That would be massive. It would be really, really horrible thing for the overall economy, the trickle-down effect, and everything else. There'll be major, 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 major problems with that, because real estate is an indicator of the overall economy because it affects so many different industries. Think about how many industries, how many individuals are impacted just by building a single house. Make it simple. Right? Somebody has to draw up the plans. Somebody has to buy the land. Somebody has to hire the contractors who hire subcontractors who all need material. So they need wood, right? So lumber industry, they need steel. They need so many different things, and the labor and the skills and the jobs and the transportation to get everything there and the money to make it all move. Real estate involves a lot of industries. And when the wheels of the money portion, the money side, the note side of the business dry up, the brakes lock up and runs to a stop, and there's the big crash. If we hit that 30%, that would be a complete game changer. It would be the worst thing that we have ever seen. Now, out of the last crash, where it peaked at 10%, it did create opportunities. In fact, that's why the note industry is where it is today. It matured in that period of time because it became a need, because the government figured out they can't fix it. Banks figured out we can't fix it. Wall Street tried to fix it and helped, but it really came down to small investors taking things over, buying the notes, doing workouts, acting more nimbly, if you will, than the bigger institutions could do. So it did create opportunity. Our industry has helped so many people across the nation, keeping them in their home, getting new people into homes, offering financing when otherwise financing isn't available. And that's been a great, great thing for all of us. 30% could be a totally different story. Now, that's a projection. We have gotten down, when they did this study, to 3.77% of all delinquencies. So since the peak, you can see it's steadily gone down. Using the same numbers that we looked at in the previous charts, we are right now at 7%. Okay, we're right about 7% of all loans being delinquent. And that's based on that Black Knight Financial Services that we just looked at versus what we had here as a peak in 2010. So we're still below the 10% where we were, but we're at 7%, which is significant. It becomes more significant because of the fact that the people who are in forbearance, the people who are not making monthly payments, and those monthly payments are being moved to the back of their loan, they're considered current, not delinquent. So it's hard to get a grasp of what that real number is. Because let's face it, there's some people doing forbearances that could probably afford to pay. But if the bank is saying that you don't have to pay, or you could continue, and if you don't pay, we'll just tack it to the back of the loan, it's logical to assume that there's going to be a percentage of people who are going to do that and say, well, yeah, why not? Let's stockpile that money. Let's invest that money somewhere else. Instead of paying the loan, they're just going to push it to the back. Why not? So there could be a portion, well, there will be a portion of people who, no problem, starting to make their payments again. Perhaps could have been making them all along. But there's also going to be people who don't have a job to go back to anymore. They don't look what all the corporate bankruptcies, all the retail stores that are going out of business, restaurants. So there's a lot of folks who may not be able to pay right now. They're hidden in these numbers, not from anything they're doing. It's just they're considered that they're not delinquent, okay? That they are indeed current. So we could definitely go up, and will more likely go up here, but 30%, probably pushing it. I don't think, with the way the government is right now, I think they would throw more money at it before they let it get to that. That's a personal kind of opinion, but I think that's what they would do, is just start printing more money once again. But we'll see. So 7%, without counting those other people, likely that number is going to increase. So this from Mortgage Bankers Association, came out June 29th. Share of mortgage loans and forbearances decreases slightly. So we did see some positive information from this, where the number has gone down according to their estimates. You might be able to see it in the middle there. I didn't highlight it for you, but oh yes, I guess I did. 4.2 million, my next slide, little click. 4.2 million homeowners are in forbearance plans. Okay, so that could add to the number of people who are in foreclosure, the number of people who are 90 days late once this government mandated forbearance comes to an end. All right, so it's gone down slightly by 1 basis point, right? So not a lot. Okay, it went down 8.48. It was at 8.48%. It went to 8.47 in June. Okay, so not a huge drop. Did go down in all fairness, but there's still about 4.2 million people who are being counted as current, even though they're not making payments. Now, again, to put that in perspective here, we'll go back to the Black Knight. We have right now 4 million people who are 30 days or more past due, but not in foreclosure. It doesn't include those folks that we just looked at over here. So we don't know what that number is again. So I'm not making a projection that it's going to double. I'm not making a projection at all. I'm just saying forbearances are going to be a part of this issue, as will bankruptcies. Okay? So bankruptcies, interestingly enough, I had to go through a lot of research to get this and put together my own chart on this. The numbers are available. It's just in a big spreadsheet that you go through and take a look at. They do track these numbers. In the blue, because I know this might be hard for some of you to see, in the blue is bankruptcy chapter 7, 13 is in the orange, and then the total of those two, the total BK, personal bankruptcy we're talking about here, is in the gray bars. So 2018, you can see that somewhere between 400 and 500,000 people declared bankruptcy chapter 7 and almost 300,000 people bankruptcy chapter 13, bringing the total to just over 700,000 people. 2019, the totals were almost identical. Okay, they are slightly different. Can't really tell from the chart there, but they're insignificantly different. So, and when you look at the 7 and 13, those are also almost mirrored from 2018. Now, 2020, obviously we're not through the entire year just yet. We are only through July is what these numbers are. And you can see it's really almost on track to be about the same. Now, is that what's going to happen? Who knows? Are there people just that are going, we're going to see bankruptcies explode because the stimulus runs out, the unemployment checks stop, people don't have the jobs that they, I don't know. Or is the government going to keep the stimulus and money going and also the unemployment? And are they going to push back rent payments again? Who knows? Who knows? But it's on track to do about the same. You know, we can look at that, and that same number obviously affects us in the business. Depending if you're buying first mortgages or second mortgage, how it affects you is quite different as well. When you buy the loan, do you own the loan, then they declare bankruptcy? I would be prepared for that. If you buy a loan after bankruptcy, what do you have to look out for? You know, what are your risks and rewards involved with all of those things? So those are the stats for you. And really what that backs up and brings us full circle to is this is the time to study about loan modification, forbearances, foreclosures, and bankruptcies. And I know there's forbearances. I have a tendency to say forbearances. Forbearances, I think sometimes I say, but you know what I'm talking about here. So loan modifications, brush up on that. What can we do to modify loans? Right? A lot of people think you can just, you can stretch the loan out. Sure, you can stretch the loan out. You can change the interest rate of the loan. You can recast loans. Recasting loans, you don't even have to worry about any kind of Dodd-Frank. You don't have to run credit. You don't have to have a RMLO do anything for recasting a loan. Other loan modifications, you probably do. You probably want to make sure it's done the right way and outsource that and have somebody do that for you. And all of the modifications you're doing, the borrower is going to have to agree. So how does it affect your bottom line if you stretch out the loan? Should you stretch out the loan and lower the interest rate? Should you keep the interest rate where it is? And should you do a combination of that? Should you just look at the payment and say, well, they can only afford this. If I lower their payment from $1,000 to $800, which is all they can now afford, what am I going to do with the rest of the loan? Am I going to forgive any kind of debt if you've been doing a forbearance already? Which, by the way, we're not required to do forbearances on seller finance loans. That's a big misconception that I think a lot of general population has, where they look at the headlines and go, oh, we can ask for forbearance and they have to give us one. No. The banks, the loans that are backed by the federal government, they do, because they're backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae, all that sort of FHA, all that sort of stuff. Seller finance loans are not. We don't have to do a forbearance. We can. In a lot of cases, you should. I'd rather have somebody still living in that property and making some kind of payment than them leaving the property and now you don't see any cash flow. But I would make them make some kind of a payment. Don't do, again, what the banks have done, which is no payments for 90 days, no payments for 90 days after that. You're building a pattern where people aren't going to pay you again. They're going to try to find every angle to not pay you because they've successfully not paid you for 6 months. And they like that at the end of the day. Don't blame them. You have to modify those loans and forbearances. So if you've already done a forbearance with somebody, then you have hopefully an end date. When you set that end date, don't give a free ride again. Get them paying something. So there's a lot of things that you can learn. We all know the terms. We all know how they work, but you have to take that next step and think about what's the best thing. How's this going to impact my note? How's it going to impact the value of this? How's it going to impact the income stream that I'm getting on this loan? If I'm doing a loan modification, is it such a modification that I'm completely changing all of the terms of the loan? Well, do I have a co-borrower? Maybe I only have one borrower, but there's 2 people living in the house. Well, for me to do this, to modify your loan, I want the second co-borrower on the loan document, right? Now I've got 2 borrowers on that. So there's a lot of different things that we can do above and beyond just knowing what a modification is or forbearance is. Foreclosures. You should be looking in all the states that you do business in and finding out, are the local courthouses open? Are they processing foreclosures right now if they're judicial states? If they're non-judicial states, same thing. Non-judicial foreclosures are still legal foreclosures. It's a legal process. It's just a non-judicial one. So you have the benefit of not having to go through court, through a judge, but there's still counties involved. There's still legal involved. And if they're not processing the paperwork, I don't care if it's judicial or non-judicial, you're not going to get your foreclosure scheduled. So it's important for us to start to do that research and compile data. So if you're doing stuff in Ohio and Indiana and Georgia and Tennessee and Carolinas, but you in Texas, but you live in Florida, well, start building a chart, start thinking through, making some phone calls and see what's going on with the foreclosure process. Can you initiate and should you initiate foreclosure proceedings right now to at least get to the front of the line? Because if it's in a state where they're just stacking up the potential foreclosures, I want to be at the front of the line. So if that means I file a lis pendens now to get my foot in the door, I might not be able to take it past the lis pendens, but boy, I've got it to the front of the queue here, that I can start to go to that next step as soon as they open that up. So absolutely worth looking into, building a chart, starting to track all of that information, because again, you don't know what's going to happen in the future here. You don't know the magnitude of what's going to happen, but you don't want to be caught off guard, right? So find out what the procedure is, find out the time frame, the cost involved, and what you can do now if you're in a situation where you need to start those proceedings. We're getting into that time of year also where you've got to start to think about perhaps the weather. If foreclosure is going to take 6-7 months, or here we are in August, we've got the hurricane seasons and all the fires and all the horrible stuff going on. Again, it could back a lot of things up. Best to be prepared so we can see down the road. I mean, there's going to be cases that you might run into. You might want to have somebody in the house just to have somebody there, even if they're not paying, right? So these are things that we're going to be facing and have to think about here as we start to progress through this year. I mean, we got the winter looming I know it's hard to think about now being in August, but October, November, December, you can have people. What are you going to do at that point in time? You're going to kick them out, and now your pipes freeze because you got nobody in the house, nobody running the water. Got to think about it. Okay, bankruptcies. And what can you do with bankruptcies depends upon when you own the note, what you're doing with the note, etc. Chapter 7, Chapter 13. Read up on those, study those. You'll learn things about doing a lift of stay. Can you proceed with a foreclosure? Can you have that property removed, sell the property? All sorts of things that we can do, but a lot of it depends upon when you own the note, what position that note is, and everything else. But it will play some kind of a role worth looking into right now. All right, let's go ahead and move on then. Another thing to focus on what we do know historically, and you can go back and look at the last crash and the last crash before that, the old Lincoln Financial days. Anytime bank financing wasn't available for people to buy homes, seller financing filled the void. It just does. People still have a big desire to own homes versus just being tenants, right? They want that equity. They want that so-called American dream to own the home and build equity in a property. So they want to buy, and when they buy, it's cheaper than rent, right? We've seen that almost everywhere in the United States right now. Seller financing fills that void when there's no traditional financing or difficult traditional financing to obtain. The biggest, you see on the bottom there, void nationwide. Now, before all this, and again, moving in the future here, we know this is affordable housing. How do we know that? Very simple. Banks make very little money on loans under $100,000 because of Dodd-Frank restrictions. Under $75,000, they virtually don't make any money. So why would they write them? Now, there's other little laws that influence them to write them. There's certain rules and regulations that say if a bank does lending in this area, they have to put a certain amount of money aside for the lower middle income loans. So they have to do them to get the bigger chunk of the pie. But a lot of banks are getting away from that type of loan. They're putting a minimum cap on what they're looking at. Look at Bank of America. I think their minimum is $75,000. Wells Fargo is about probably the same, or maybe $60,000. They won't do loans less than that. And all of you, especially in the note business, especially investing in the Midwest and the Southeast, you probably have in your portfolio a bunch of homes that are all under $75,000 in value. People can't get financing for that. That's going to be an opportunity because the desire to buy is still there. It makes sense for them to buy. I bet everybody at home, I was going to say in the room, everybody at home, if you haven't been looking at notes and start looking at notes, or you have a portfolio of notes, or at least have been looking at notes, you've seen mortgage payments of $300, $400, $500, but the rent is $700, $800, $900 for that same home. It makes sense for them to buy if they can get the financing. You know what? They don't care what the interest rate is. They care what the monthly payment is all about. That's why you see so many seller finance notes at 8, 9, 10%. They don't care about that. What's my monthly payment? $400, rent's $850, done and done. Because eventually I'll refinance or sell the property. Okay? That's what they're thinking. So this creates a big opportunity in affordable housing. And in the note business, most of us have already been working in that space anyhow. Most real estate investors work in that space. Lower price band, homes under $100,000. I think it's now $150,000 we consider lower price band because property values have gone up so much. It's harder and harder for certain borrowers to get loans because banks are getting away from the consumer lending. And you know who they're actually lending to through warehouse lines of credit? Non-banks. Non-banks aren't under the same restrictions. Non-banks can say, no, we just don't do those types of loans. Okay? They're not a part of that neighborhood improvement type of act where big banks have to hold a certain money aside and lend, as I was saying, to the lower middle income. Non-banks go, nah, we don't have to do that. They're not a part of this. And a lot of non-banks get lines of credit from the bigger banks. It's easier for them to do that. So the most difficult loans for people to get today, and again, I got my sources down there, borrowers with lower credit scores, right? So if you're under 650, it becomes increasingly difficult to get a loan. Most of the seller finance loans that you see, the borrower's credit's under 650. It just is that way. Mortgages with higher loan to value ratios. In other words, they don't have a big down payment. If you don't have a big down payment, harder to get a loan. Jumbo loans, also affected. So the low end and the high end, interestingly enough, banks don't want to take that big risk. Banks don't want to go ahead and lend a whole bunch of money on a house because they're uncertain what's going on too. So it's been difficult for jumbo loans, over 510,000 in most markets, over 760 in other marketplaces. Adjustable rate mortgages. Fannie Mae said we're not buying those anymore. If they're not buying them, banks will not create them because they can't sell them, right? And banks don't hold these notes in their portfolios. If they do, it's a small percentage, right? Non-qualified mortgages. These are the old subprimes. They just call them non-qualified. Nobody's underwriting those right now to any high degree. I know somebody could probably get on Google and find a bank that's doing non-qualified loans. Okay, to what capacity, right? So it's not really a category, at least for now. Right? So the small down payment, bad credit, that sort of thing, they're not underwriting those loans right now at all. Makes sense, right? Everybody's kind of, whoa, let's pull back a little bit here and hedge our bets. So as an effect of all of this, there's a ratio that's called the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. And that really shows how much credit is available. Right? How much credit can you get? And there's a whole index on how they calculate that, which we don't need to go into. But knowing that there's an index that looks at that, says, is mortgage credit available? Well, it's dropped. Okay? In April 2020, it dropped 20% down to a 152 index. 2 months later, it's now down to 126. So that trend line, once again, went from drop of 20%, 152, all the way down now to 126. Just 2 months later, which means it's harder for people to get credit to buy properties. This is information that we know and is tracked. So let's put this in perspective. This is the Mortgage Credibility Index now going from 2004 to 2020 in April. When was the last crash? It was around 2009, 10. Look where we were on a credit availability back in 05, 06. Easy money days. Easy money days. Credit was really easy to get. That's what this looks at. That's what this monitors at. So I hope that snaps this into perspective for you, that money was so easy to get. Credit's availability was so high, it eventually had a crash. It eventually had a crash. Money was given to people who didn't have the ability to pay it back. They were setting people up literally for failure. Why? Because the banks could quickly package that paper up and sell it to investors. And we all know what happened. This is a different crisis because that affordability index after the crash, you can see hovered for years down at the baseline. Okay, the baseline on this index is 100. It hovered right down there. Then it started getting up again. 2013, it started, 14. And then 18, 19 went up. And what happened? It's taken a big drop back down. Okay, big drop back down. So it's definitely harder to get loans. There's less credit available, which is going to have a bigger impact on the affordable housing. It makes sense. Property prices, though, have gone up. This is the median price for new single-family homes that have been sold all the way through 2020. Since 2010, it's gone up substantially. Median price, $320,000. Is that affordable? Are there loans available? Okay. These are not, for most people, affordable, and they don't have loans that are available for them. This is where seller financing comes in. So it's been a direct line up there. Here's another way to look at it. Okay, this is a different source. Same thing. Property, medium home price trends have gone up, but most people really can't afford that. Okay, what else do we have? Well, in August 2020, DS News, most of you, I'm assuming, are familiar with DS News if you're in this industry. Affordable homeownership opportunities continue to be an elusive object in the housing market, according to First American Financial Corp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where can people buy affordable homes? They can buy them if they can get the loans. If they can't get the loans, they can't buy them. Your opportunity is seller financing, specifically in affordable areas. This is based upon facts that we know. Yeah, there's been a V-shaped recovery. If you look at some of the other charts, I could have gone on and on with charts, but you look at some of the other charts, it's absolutely showing a V-shaped recovery, but not in this market, not in this elusive object that they're saying here. So I thought you would be curious. So these are the top 10 states with most affordable housing: Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Michigan, and South Dakota, in that order. And of course, if you're in the note business or the real estate business, Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, okay, those have been markets that we've been working through and on since 2010. Right? Pennsylvania, you could probably put in there as well. Not so much inventory in Nebraska or North Dakota. Oklahoma, yes. West Virginia, yes. Michigan, yes. South Dakota, not so much. So most of these markets, what is that, 7 of these, 7 out of the top 10 affordable housing is areas that you're already buying notes in. This is falling into our laps. It's also falling into the laps of real estate investors who should be buying property, fixing it up, and selling it with seller financing. That's where the market is. It's a perfect technique. If you're just in real estate and you're flipping houses, you're missing out. You need to attach the note technique to your real estate investing. And again, there's plenty of other articles that support this small loan scenario. They just don't make enough money doing these loans, so they're not going to do them. So what most fix and flip real estate investors, they don't do seller financing, which is a mistake, because they want to cash out. They want to buy it, fix it up, turn around, sell it, cash out, move on to the next one. I really want you to explore creating seller financing. Because what if I told you that you could sell the property quicker at a premium price if you offered financing and still get all the money you need to cash out? Not going to get everything, but you can cash out and get what you need if you create a note properly. You can create a seller finance note and pre-sell all or part of it. Done correctly, you can do that even at the closing. Interesting. So if you acquire a piece of real estate, maybe through a non-performing note, maybe through foreclosure, maybe through a creative financing technique, sell it with seller financing, do it the right way. If you don't know the right way, that's what you have the time to do right now, which is learn about this and pre-sell all or part of that note before you even create it. That way you know, if I create it like this, here's how much I can get for it. If I create it like that, I can only get this. Right? So you start to learn how to create good quality sellable notes. And then you can sell that note several months down the road, or possibly even cash it out right at the closing, getting back all the capital you need, and then building this long-term income stream, which again, you could keep, you could sell part of it, and then years down the road, sell another part of it. You know, with real estate, you sell it one time, you're done. With a note, you can sell it multiple times. You can keep going back to that well and selling that note over and over and over again. If you run the numbers, you'll find you'll make a lot more money by combining the best of real estate with the best of real estate notes. So start selling with seller financing, especially in affordable housing, home space, and build relationships with investors who are creating these notes. There are investors already now doing this technique. I work with clients on a one-on-one basis every single day. I'm seeing more and more of this, and sometimes one relationship can lead to 5 deals. And those might be the only 5 deals they do that year off of one relationship with one client. And you help that client create the notes the right way, and you make more money, safer money each time you do a transaction with them. This is all based upon what we know. Focus on what we know. Number 3, combining the best of real estate with the best of real estate note techniques allows more opportunity and more flexibility. Isn't that what we want? We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future here. We're in unprecedented times, as we've been saying. So why not expand your knowledge base and add in the real estate in its totality, not just real property, but real property with financing. That's the real estate marketplace. That gives you opportunities that you'll see that have always been there, but you haven't recognized because you didn't have that added skill set. And it does give you more flexibility, because what if you think the market's going to do this and boom, the government comes in, changes a law, you've got to have flexibility. You guys say we can't do that anymore because the government says we can't, or they're delaying what I'm doing. What do I do now? You want flexibility in that marketplace. If you're going to keep looking for deals the way you've always done it, pre-pandemic, all this thing we're in, chances are that technique may not work, may not even be available to work. We've got to expand our knowledge base, and that includes the landlord type of owners. I mean, we're right here. Okay, we're right here right now where the eviction protection, unless something changes here, which could happen, is going away. What's going to happen? Now, there's people predicting that, we're going to have tens of millions of people be evicted out of their property. It's not going to happen. I mean, if you're a landlord, you're going to evict all of your tenants. You got 10 houses, you're going to evict them all, and then have nobody coming in and bring in new people who haven't been paying somewhere else. Now, there's going to be a mix of that. Some people have to go. They're not going to make any more payments. Other people are going to work with it, say, look, you got to catch up now. You got to increase. So there's going to be a whole mixed bag of all this sort of stuff, but it is going to affect you. We just don't know how big it is. Here's from Forbes, over 40% of renters now at risk of eviction. Can't see all of them doing, being evicted out there, but there's the numbers. Nonetheless, and this is of July 2020 here. So we do have to think in terms of let's get more creative. Let's build in flexibility. Let's lower our risk, by doing that. Let's look at more opportunities. And it's really all these topics that we have been talking about. I've seen through my consulting, as I mentioned, I do consulting every single day, working with people through their deals, identifying risk, pointing out opportunities. That's what I do. Real estate investors are getting more creative when they're purchasing. Okay, they're absolutely getting more creative when they're purchasing. I've already seen it. They're learning these techniques or reapplying these older real estate techniques, and you need to do the same thing and utilize them. For example, buying subject to. Buying subject to is not a new technique. That's been around for so long now. I can't even think of when how long it's been around. It's been around that long. So buying subject to is fine. You can acquire real estate. For those who don't know, I'm sure most of our audience does, but if you're buying a property subject to, you're just taking over. It's basically an agreement where you're going to take over the current property owner's loan for them. You're not going to get new financing to buy the property. You're just going to take over their loan. Okay? It's an agreement. You're not going to be signing the loan document. You're just agreeing you're going to make their payments, and they sign the deed over to you. So now you own the property. And investors have used this for a long time. They take over the loan, they fix it up, they sell the property, they pay off the underlying loan, they keep the profit. No problem. Another thing you can do, though, again, use a note technique in there, buy it subject to, and then sell the property on a wrap. So now you've got the underlying first mortgage, which might be the Bank of America loan that the Smith family was paying on. You agreed to buy the property subject to their loan. okay? Putting down money or not putting down money, depends on the deal. So we've got that underlying Bank of America loan, and then you sell it because now you've enhanced the value of the property. You sell it on a larger loan, and that loan wraps around the Bank of America loan. So if you have $1,000 coming in from the bigger loan and you have to pay out $300 to Bank of America, you're netting the $700 in between. I'm just pulling numbers. So it's a great technique. Again, if you sell it on a wrap, a lot of people think, well, I'm stuck then. Now I just have to keep this. No. Can you sell a wraparound mortgage on the open market? Yeah, absolutely you can. Sure you can. Right? The numbers have to work. Okay? The numbers have to work, but that's the whole thing. When you create that wrap, you make sure, is this a sellable note? Can I do this? Is this going to work out? If it can't, don't do it. Right? Obvious. Okay? If it does, great. Yes, that is a sellable loan. Combining options. I've seen a lot of people buying real estate on options. Again, options give you great flexibility. When you buy, you can use options. When you sell, you can use options. I mean, options are fantastic, and especially in an uncertainty that we're facing here, getting the right to buy something versus the obligation puts you in a bit of a power position here. So you can combine a couple of those techniques. Look, you're going to have, just let me play out a scenario here. You're going to have people who haven't paid rent for 6 months. Why? Because they didn't have to. And now they may not have a job. They may not have the income. Well, now they've been evicted or asked to leave from their current place. And they're coming to look at your place. You know, where did you rent from last time? I don't know, maybe you're making phone calls to landlords. So they're going, no, they haven't paid 6. You know, we're gonna have a lot of that. So why not let somebody rent for a period of time with the option to buy it? And you structure the option to buy where there's incentives in there. Their payment might go down. You know, they'll start to get equity in the property. You're going to have better tenants. You're going to have the flexibility with them where they say, no, we don't want to exercise the option. Well, in that case, they can move out, move on. You can keep all the option money, sell it again, do the same thing. In the meantime, you've got a better quality tenant because they thought they owned it, or at least in their mind, they're going, this is ours, you know, one day, right? And it didn't happen. Or they exercise the option and they buy it. Most people put in there, you can get bank financing if you can get it, and then you get cashed out, or I'll finance it for you. And here are the structures of the terms, how we can do that. If they can't do that, you have the other option, which is make another agreement. You don't have to. You can tell them, well, you had 12 months, you know, and then you were supposed to exercise your option in the 13th month. You didn't do it, so it's time to move on. Could you extend it? You could. You could offer that to them. Their contract says no, 13 months. So again, puts you in a more powerful position when you're doing these things. And that's ultimately what we need. We want to face uncertainty with the most flexibility that we can, and also have the proper techniques within us that we can see opportunities where others don't. We can creatively do things where others simply can't do that. That's going to open up all opportunities. Then it doesn't matter how big this crash is or how small the crash is, how smooth it is, how many people can't pay, how many people are paying again. It's not going to matter if you're better prepared. So again, my suggestion is let's focus on what we know and let's be prepared to utilize techniques around that. That's what I do. I help people every day. I look at their deals with them through Zoom, one-on-one. I don't outsource that. I'm not a big mill educator, get as many people through the program. I can't. I work with people one-on-one, and that makes a big difference. And I do. I provide the best training, consulting in the industry. I've trained a lot of high-level people within the industry, and I'm very, very proud of that. I take it very, very seriously. I study education, how people work. And I started to think about the industry and how it was being taught. And I said, we're missing something here. People go to one training, they can't learn everything, and they can't keep up on their notes. That's why I moved online a year and a half ago. Over a year and a half ago, I went back out on my own and said, you know what, I'm going to put everything online. That way people can start and stop and rewind and go back and re-listen and absorb that information and do it in such a way that they can pinpoint it and find it. And I've built the education, which I've written for so many people in the past. I mean, I've written for real estate trainers and such for over 15 years. So I recognize that although working in groups has a benefit, it's not the same as one-on-one. It doesn't compare. So my clients are getting fast results because I do give them the individual attention that they need, what's important to them. And they schedule these sessions. I provide, here's my calendar, pick the date and times that you want, and really work with people that way alongside of getting them educated. And I've got, just a number of people now, first deal within 30 days, second deal a couple of weeks later. Other people might take them 2 months to get them in their first deal. Depends on their pacing and everything else. So if you're looking for that, I do have different programs based upon your experience. So if you're new, I've got packages and things that I can work with you on. If you're advanced, I've got separate packages for those folks as well. So I'd be glad to talk with anybody about that. If you're looking for help in these areas that we talk about or any other areas in the note business, I've been around. You can, if you want to learn more about me, Google me. You'll find plenty. You get my book on Amazon and such. And I'm going to do this too for this audience and Noteworthy. I know it's all been virtual here, and I don't have a chance to meet you in person and shake your hand and all that. So here's what I would recommend. I've got a podcast, Real Estate Without Renters Show. My website is realestatewithoutrenters.com. I've got a YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search my name. You'll find it. A lot of videos up there. I do Note Investor Tip of the Day. It's up there. So there's a ton of information. You can reach me at kevin@kevinshortle.com. It's spelled S-H-O-R-T-L-E. So it's Kevin@kevinshortle, S-H-O-R-T-L-E.com. And shoot me an email and I'll send you a link. It'll be a calendar link, and we'll schedule a free one-on-one session. We'll talk personally, see if there's what I can do to help you. If we like it, if it's a good fit, we'll proceed from there. If not, at least we found out, and maybe we hook up later on and do business at that point in time. But I'm offering that to everybody who is attending this, because again, we can't be there in person. So just shoot me an email, Kevin@kevinshortle.com. I'll get you a schedule. We'll have a little one-on-one session on the phone. If you want to do it on Zoom, I can set it up on that as well. And let's talk about what you want to do in the business, what you want to do to move forward, and how I can individually help you. My program is limited. Okay, it has to be limited. This is not a sales technique or anything. I'm one person. I work with people one-on-one. When you're working with me, I'm not outsourcing it to somebody else. A lot of trainers do that, right? You never talk to the person you want to talk to. It's somebody else within the organization you haven't met. With me, it is me. So that limits we only have so much time. I can only take on so many clients. I can only take on so many clients. So once I reach my maximum number, then I'll have to stop that program. And we're getting to that point, but I do still have a room. So if you're interested in working with me, learning directly from me on a personal level, shoot me an email and we'll set up a call and we'll take it from there. So hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Hope you got some takeaways from that. You got some things that you can think about and mostly take some action on. I know you're going to enjoy the rest of the whole Noteworthy events, and next year, let's hope and pray that we can get together personally at another Noteworthy event. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest. Oh, that's right. We're going to stop, and I forgot. We're going to have a little Q&A session at the end. So sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and do the question and answer right now.
You there, Kev?
I am here. There we go.
That's fantastic, man.
Live in person. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. There's a bunch of questions in here. So let's just start. We'll start from the top. So one, Hassan asks, how does a new investor make it in the note business with limited funds? What advice would you offer there?
Okay, a couple different ways for new investors with limited funds. What you need to think of in terms of the most powerful thing in this business really is to identify a deal. And that's whether you're a beginner or advanced. So my recommendation is for somebody who's new, get that ability, think of that as a muscle you want to exercise, to ability to identify a deal, because if you can find good deals, there are other buyers out there and available, always looking for deals. I mean, Ben, if I came to you with a great REO property and I laid it all out for you and say, here's what I found, here's the information on the neighborhood, here's what the comparable sales are, and I presented it to you, there's a good chance that you would buy that if it fits what you're looking for, right?
Right.
So same thing. It's easy to find note buyers in the industry today. And all you have to do is bring them good deals that fit what they're looking for. Now, typically they call that brokering. We try to stay away from that term in the industry, but that's really what you're doing. You're simply finding a deal, presenting it to another party. And there's a couple of ways today that you can do that.
Okay. Jan Schubert asks you to please define recasting a loan.
Recasting a loan, yeah. It's an underutilized technique. It really is. And I like it because it doesn't require any Dodd-Frank underwriting, anything like that. And it's going to be a timely technique, I think, because you have people in forbearance, and and I saw some people asking, how do you pronounce it? It is forbearance, but I sometimes say forbearance, but you get it. What you can do is, if you're working with somebody to get them repaying on a loan again, and they have some extra capital, okay, that's where the key comes in on recasting. If they can put, they haven't made payments for 6 months now, right? And now you're getting back into a loan. Let's take $5,000 that they have that they can give you. You'll apply that money directly towards the principal balance. And then you simply re-amortize or recast the loan. So you just go through a re-amortization schedule. You're not changing the term. You're not changing the interest rate. But what effectively happens is when you re-amortize it, it will lower their payment. So it's a great little technique to do, and it helps get that borrower to put some more skin back in the game. Yeah. Doesn't require any Dodd-Frank.
So, okay. But does a modification require Dodd-Frank compliance?
It depends on how big the mod is. I mean, sometimes, let's face it, people are doing loan modifications that are essentially writing a new loan. And with that, you do have to meet a minimum criteria. We are not held to the same Dodd-Frank standards as FDIC insured banks and lenders, right? But we do have to meet the minimum standard, which is that person's ability to pay. So that means you do have to look at income statements. You should run a net worth statement, and you should run credit when you're doing any kind of a serious modification.
Okay. Let's see. Sarah Zarkpa says, Kevin, you're the best mentor I have seen. That's a nice compliment.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Attendee question. So many states are now requiring mortgage holders, not just lenders, to be licensed and registered at significant expense, even if it's just for one note. Can you please give some inside advice about that?
I have not seen that where your statement started. I think with many states are starting to do that. There may be, and again, look at the details here. I'm not second guessing what you're saying, but many doesn't sound correct to me. What really happens with licensing that I have seen, and it's been a little bit of a slow growing trend, has been on debt collection. And that's where the licensing comes in. It's not to buy existing notes. It's not to trade in existing notes. And I don't think they can impede upon that, because when you really look at this, notes are considered personal property. So if they start restricting what you can do and buy and sell with your personal funds from a private seller, I mean, we're getting into, big areas there. So I think where you're seeing the licensing is going to come in if you are a debt collector. But see, that's something as a note investor, we're going to outsource to somebody who is properly licensed to collect the debt. We can gather information. There's a lot of things that we can do, but debt collection is one that you probably want to stay away from anyway. Nobody on listening, I think, wants to get on the phone and track somebody down and call them and start, demanding for money. That's something we're going to outsource to professionals who are much better at that than us. You may run into some things if you're doing multiple deals and you're doing it as an individual. They might say you need to be a license, and maybe that was something you were looking at, but that's why everybody in the business, you form a business. We like to do in this industry business to business transactions, and the government absolutely looks at that differently than business to consumer. And that's where business to consumer, more responsibilities, more likelihood for licensing, business to business, both parties should know they're professionals in their industry.
Got it. Man, there's a ton of questions here to get into, but we want to get to a live deal analysis.
Yeah, you want to do that first?
Yeah.
And then.
So let me allow you to share the screen here.
Kevin, you got a bunch of fan people, so we'll just give a few shout outs to
Thanks.
Sarah and Brandon and Han. Like, Kevin's the best instructor. He's the best mentor. Like, got a lot of love. You're getting a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. I really do. It means a lot.
Steve says Kevin's book is the best I've read on notes and various techniques. So
sweet. Awesome. Thank you
Kevin,
so much, everybody.
You should be all set to share if you need to.
Okay. Oh yeah, gotcha. All right. Let me get that all set up here. And there we go. You guys can see my screen now?
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. I got a good one. I'll tell you, I was trying to figure out what deal. I've got 15 minutes, right? So there's going to be a lot of information coming your way at one time. So it's got to be down to the nitty gritty, but I have to frame this up a little bit for everybody. I had so many different case studies to go through here, but with the limited time, it finally dawned on me yesterday. I'm like, I've got the perfect case study that fits into this. And it actually follows along the same path of deals that I've seen that I was talking about in the state of the industry, because overall, we are seeing good, solid inventories of notes. So that really hasn't changed at all. But as I indicated earlier, there has been a growth in REO investors, real estate investors buying property and selling with seller financing. Now, again, that ties in because loans are not as available as one would think. I'm also starting to see that there's been more activity than I've recognized in a long time in the upper end of the lower price band, if that makes sense. The lower price band is typically around $150,000, but many times in the note business, we've been in the lower middle end of that. I'm starting to see an increase on the upper of the lower end, $150,000 range and such. And I'm seeing more real estate investors sell with financing. And what's been interesting is if you, again, listen to my tip of the day, I've even talked about this. I'm seeing some mistakes that are made by the real estate investors. So we have to be, as note investors, sharp enough to catch those, sharp enough to know how to overcome those and modify those things so that we can alleviate any risk. So I chose a case study from a gentleman that I've been working with now since February, brand new to the note business, just got started in February. He's already closed 3 or 4 deals and working on this one. So what's neat about this one too is this is an actual deal that is going on right now as we speak, and I've been working with him over the week. So I'm going to try to replicate in a very short period of time what we've done together on this one so that you can duplicate this same process. So to frame this up, this was a deal that was nurtured through networking. One of the things that you're going to want to do now and into the future is start to identify these real estate investors that are creating notes. You probably know one, right? So Dan and John, and that's what they do now, right? They buy deals, they create notes, and eventually they want to sell those notes and focus where their expertise is, which is finding the real estate deals, getting those under control, and selling them with seller financing. So we can have a perfect relationship here if we can build a network of those individuals. So my client in this case absolutely did that. Started doing some deals, purchased 2 deals from the same investor. And I was saying from deal 1, this guy's really putting good stuff together. You need to nurture a relationship, and he did. So they offered him this current opportunity. It's a brand new deal. Like I said, it just happened in August. The borrowers made their first payment on it. So it is brand new. They bought a home. They fixed it up and they sold it with seller financing. And they said, would you be interested in buying this? And that's where we are. So we went through this process, and this is generally the process that you're going to take when you look at these type of deals, which you're buying a note that's fairly new, that was created by a real estate investor. You have to analyze, first of all, the initial numbers. Show me the surface level numbers. Let me do some quick calculations to see if this deal makes sense. That's where we're looking at investment to value ratios. We're looking at yields. We're looking at some very easy projections that most of you, I would think, already understand. You're then going to study the collateral. The collateral is so important to us as note investors because that is our fallback. If things go horribly wrong, we're going to end up with that collateral. And at the end of the day, you should be totally okay with that, because if you're totally okay with that, you've effectively lowered or eliminated your risk. In these type of deals, the borrowers also play a bigger role for us. And we need to look at those borrowers. Hopefully, the person who's creating this note has done it the right way, in that they have a loan application, they're looking at income, they've looked at credit, they've checked the box of the affordability clause, which is what we have to abide by, and they can provide you with that documentation of proof. That's going to be very important to you in these types of notes, because a lot of times you're buying these without the normal seasoning. Seasoning is a payment history. You're buying these without the normal seasoning that you might often be looking for. Okay? But we want to be able to take these deals and run with them. But a lot of that's going to depend upon the borrower, the strength of the borrower. So collateral and the borrower in this becomes much more important on these early notes. We're then going to do a complete financial analysis, including exit strategies, and there should be strategies on there. It's not one exit strategy. You go into these with at least 3 exit strategies, going best case scenario, second best case scenario, worst case scenario. And sometimes there's even more than that. You're going to review the paperwork. So important to review the paperwork. I'm absolutely shocked sometimes when people send something and they go, well, did I buy the right thing? Was this okay? And the paperwork is not totally correct. And sometimes we have to go back and correct those things. It's best if you review it ahead of time, make the corrections then, and then close on the transaction. I'll talk about that. Identify the risk. There's risk in every investment. What is the risk? Can I live with the risk, or can I modify the risk if at all possible? And then proceed to an offer. Sometimes you're going to be marketing for partners. Many times in this business, you buy enough notes and now you're like, I got to find a partner because I've got all my cash working for me. Good problem to have. We can do that. And then move on to the closing here. Okay, so let's take a look at this deal. Real deal going on right now, San Antonio, Texas. Again, on the upper end of things, $185,000 is the property value. That's what it's sold for. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. And whoops, sorry, my mouse clicked on the button there. The first mortgage that they're going to create is $161,050. So the borrower put down $23,950. In addition, they paid about $6,000 in closing costs. But when we run our numbers, we look at what did they put down. And they put 13% down of the purchase price. That's pretty good. When we're buying notes, when we're looking to create our own notes on this, we like to get 10% down. Hey, if we can get 20% or more, fantastic. 5 is okay. If you can get 10, you're doing fine, and 13% is just that much much better. So the buyer of the property has built-in equity, right? We establish equity 3 ways. We buy equity in the form of down payment, and then hopefully the property value goes up versus what we owe, and we're paying down the loan every month, and those are the other 2 items that increase this equity. So going into this deal, 87% is going to be the loan to value ratio, which is something that we look at. It is a first mortgage. The payoff is 161. Well, that's because it's a brand new loan. They wrote the loan at 8.9%. And I said earlier in my state of industry that a lot of the people buying these properties on seller financing, they don't care too much about that number, the 8.9%. They're more concerned about what is my monthly payment. You see, if they want a lower interest rate, go to a bank and get a loan. It's very simple, right? They could get 3-4% of the bank. The fact is they can't for whatever reason that might be, all right? Could be debt to income, could be credit, could be a multitude of things, but can they afford this payment? And of course, they also look at the rent. Now, down on the bottom, you can see here, the average rent for that type of home in this area at this time is $1,500 per month. So their monthly payment is still lower than the rent. Now, of course, they're going to have taxes and insurance here, but they're going to have the ability to build up equity on here. Good deal for them. Later on, can they refinance? Absolutely. So the yield at the purchase price that was negotiated, which we'll get to, will be over 9%. Now, I know there's a lot of investors that are seasoned that come to Noteworthy all the time, and they're looking at 9%, not good enough for me. I got it. Part of this is establishing relationships, building upon note to note. So maybe you get one at 9 here, maybe the next one's at 11. So it's a little bit of a different play. So don't tune out if you're just like, nope, for me, it's got to be 12% or I'm not doing it. So there's lessons to be in here. 9% secured is still a good investment. The investment to value ratio based on the purchase price of the note is, which is 159 there, by the way, is pretty high, you know, for a new note. Okay, so again, part of this is looking at the initial numbers, thinking about the risk, and wondering, should I proceed or not? We're going to come back and address that issue as well. So yes, I would totally agree. That's on the high side. What's also probably on the high side for some of you is you're looking at, well, if you pay 159 and they owe 161, you're really high into the UPB as well. Got that. But there's a procedure here. We're looking at preliminary numbers. What other things might we discover as we go through these deals? So one of the things that everybody needs to develop and utilize, and I know you can't see that. I'm throwing up a spreadsheet. This is the actual spreadsheet, but I know you can't read the numbers, nor am I going to read them to you. My point is, in showing you this though, is you need to have some kind of a financial analysis tool, whether you create it yourself, there's other software programs out there that you can get to run these numbers for you. Right? And you can see this is just one that I developed here. I take into consideration the property condition. I take into consideration the rent in the area, you know, all the various numbers that you would normally see and run through that. I also have built in there, what if I did partials on this? And then on the bottom, you can see that there's also exit strategies built in there. So these financial tools can really help you in this business, because you can data entry at one time and then have all your potential exit strategies already play out. And that's really, really going to be helpful to you. I still use a handheld calculator all the time, but having something like this does make it a lot easier when you can start to play around with numbers and see the big picture. And my little spreadsheet actually has a note rating, and you can see on this one, it's in the yellow. Okay, it's not a 10. This my note evaluation number goes from a 1 to 10 scale. 10 being obviously very, very good. 1, forget about it. This one's in the yellow. It's in the we got to see something here to make this work. But it's important that, again, run the preliminary, run a little deeper then, and start to look at your exit strategies. Go, can this work, or am I wasting my time? Some deals you look at, you might be done here. Great, move it on. No problem at all. So part of what I think everybody needs to understand also is these transactions are not just about numbers. Real estate is not just about numbers. There's people behind these deals. Right? It's a people business that we're in. Real estate's a people business. Real estate notes is a people business. So part of what you need to look at is, what is the numbers telling me and what's the story behind it? Part of the story, as we're looking at the financial analysis on this note, was the borrowers do look very good. They went through all the proper paperwork. They've been self-employed, but they have a really strong 3-year track record of being self-employed. They're married with 3 children. They're honest, hardworking. They've actually lived in this same neighborhood, renting, I believe. Now they want to own. They showed very well that they could afford the payments that are involved. So that's kind of balancing things out here. So we're not completely at this point, as we were now analyzing this, convinced that this is a good deal to do or not, but that's what we're uncovering here. That's why this initial portion is so important to us here. So you start to look at the neighborhood next. You're going to run your demographics, because every other home in that surrounding area does affect the value of this property. And we have to, as I said, we have to look at that collateral. We have to be comfortable with that collateral value, because worst case is we're going to take it back. And if we do, can we still make money with it? So you can see that we've run some demographics on the area. All of this is very easy for us to get today. There's free websites that you can get all of this. I think this one was from bestplaces.net over here that shows the median home, the average cost, the appreciation values, percentages of homes that are owned and rented. We can see good growth in the area. That was from Zillow. So these are all easy, free sources that you can use. The one here that shows a risk of decline being very, very low. That's a risk of decline in property value low. That's on HomeFacts. So this property, again, the story was it's purchased as a foreclosure and sold with seller financing here. So some of the considerations we looked at is the borrowers do have a fixed income. That easily covers the loan. So they're self-employed, but there's some additional income that easily covers the loans. Okay, so now that starts to adjust our risk reward scale a little bit here. The loan payments are less than average than the rent. We saw that already. There's no additional liens. Obviously, the property was bought, it was paid for cash, it was fixed up and sold. Property taxes are being sold through or paid through an escrow, and the payments are all set up through automatic deposit. You know, so again, when you start to look at this and look at the story and the deal, well, we've got a borrower here that's got a business, but they've got some fixed income here that can cover this. They're allowing it to be automatically debited out of that account. That's a pretty solid borrower. Plus, yes, we did go through all of the paperwork. Now, I've redacted information here, obviously, but we went through the loan application. We looked at the income. We saw, can they afford this? Can they really make the payments on this? We looked at the note. Was the note written properly? Are all the ingredients in there with the note? What kind of a deed was it with the property? This is a warranty deed with a vendor's lien. Some of you, unless you're from Texas, have never heard that before. Well, find out what it's all about. What are the rights and rewards within that, right? And that involves, by the way, it's almost like a land contract, to give you a little tip there. So that means easier to get the property back, etc. So you have to examine these documents. I saw a document, just a little side note here. I was working with somebody yesterday, and we were going through so many different assignments and launches. I think there were 6 or 7 in total. And then you get to what's called a scrivener's deed. Okay, a scrivener's deed is used when somebody at the title company messed up and they have to correct it. This one went back 6 different changes of real estate because the legal description was wrong. And they said, hey, between this sale, this has been corrected. Between this sale, this has to be corrected. So there are things like scrivener's deeds, corrective deeds that can fix things that are wrong. If there's a missing signature, if there's some kind of other typo that just needs to be corrected, they can be corrected. So as we go through and analyze these documents, we also look for what are our rights. If they don't pay, what can we do? You'll see in some land contracts, if they don't pay and they're more than 30 days late, they become a month-to-month tenant. If they don't pay the month-to-month, they have no legal rights in the property. You don't even have to foreclose. You go right in. Other ones, no. You have to give them 90 days. You can't. So the documents tell you what your risk is, what your rights are, what you can and cannot do. Very important that you analyze these. Now, having said that, are you going to sit there and read all 12 pages of a document? No, you know where to look for key ingredients, but it's a very important step to do. If you're overlooking the documents, you're basically buying blind. This is what we're buying, everybody. It's backed by the real property, but this is what we're buying within the context of those 4 corners of all these documents. How could you buy a note without looking at it and understanding it? If you don't understand it, you're not ready to buy, in my opinion. You know, you might get lucky, or you might buy something that is totally messed up and you'll pay for it down the road. So we start to think in terms of analysis and exit strategies. And you can see on this one, my client built 3 exit strategies. One is we're going to buy it, we're going to season it for 2 years and then sell the note. The other one, we're going to season it for 1 year and sell the note. The next one, we're going to maybe we have to foreclose. And what would we make in each one? So he's looking at the internal returns. He's looking at how much money that they would make in each one so that he's comfortable with all of the 3 options. So again, we talked about flexibility earlier, and we want to be flexible. on these transactions. And this gives you a lot of that flexibility. Guys, let me know if I'm running late here or what have you. Let's see. So UPB, tracking all of that, again, playing your exit strategies. It's going to be backed by a mortgage and a note. It is 9% yield, backed by $185,000 property for $159,000. And the possible risk factors, and this will be my second to last slide here. So you look at the risk, right? We identify the risk. The risk at this one is that they do have home value depreciation. Can that happen in other areas? It can. This one didn't indicate that that was looking that way market-wise, but again, we're in uncertain times. But low impact if that happened, because we're buying at a discount. If we had a long play it to get out of it, we're probably still going to be good. The other one, of course, is the borrower might default. And that's a really big concern on this one, because he's buying at the higher end potentially of this deal. And he hasn't bought it yet, by the way. That's what I mean. It's brand new. He's buying at the high end of this on investment to value and investment to UPB, but it still could work out very, very well for him, because he's also building a relationship with this particular person. He's already bought several deals from them. But could the borrower default? They could, but every indicator said no. They've got emotional equity. They love this neighborhood. The kids are going to the school already in this neighborhood because they've lived in this neighborhood. They've got the business. They've got the fixed income. But I still told him, I said, the problem is if you want a partner on this, which he wants, he's looking for an active partner to do this deal with. I said, the problem they're going to have is you're buying on the higher end of these ratios on a completely untested note. They've made one payment. I know their credit looks good. I know they look like good borrowers, but something could happen. People get injured. People, there's all kinds of things that could happen. And I was looking for a partner for him. And I was like, they're not going to like these ratios. I can tell you that right now. So he went back and started looking at that and did something very creative, something I haven't seen in a while. He has it in writing. The note seller, potential note seller here, has agreed to guarantee the payments for the first year. If this borrower, what the note seller is saying is, if this borrower defaults within the first 12 months, I'll buy the note back from you at full price, and got that in writing. I wanted to point that out because he identified potential risk. And what I said is sometimes we have to go back and look at that risk and say, what can we do to modify that risk? Well, now it's been modified. That all of a sudden makes this attraction go up here, because this property very likely to continue to appreciate. There's going to be equity established in here. Nice looking for a longer term investor that wants to long play a note here and build a relationship. So now what he's done, a large part of this presentation, as what I gave him kind of the roots for it, but he built a large part of this to show to potential partners. So for those of you looking for potential real estate partners on these note deals, you need to put together a good presentation so you can say, here's why this is a good deal, and have all the supporting paperwork on the back. All right. I see you there, Aaron. I'm sorry if I ran long. I didn't see what time it started.
It was great. It was great. It was great. It was wonderful. People love it. You got so many fanboys and girls. It's ridiculous. Like, if I had that many fanboys and girls, I'd just retire.
Hey, Kevin.
What am I going to do? I can't play golf, so
let's do some rapid fire Q&A.
Yeah, a couple questions here for you. So, let's see here. Somebody asked a question about parking money temporarily in short-term notes. Maybe they mean partials. Is that something you're doing until the COVID issue is over in terms of a risk mitigation?
Personally, I think there's a better solution to that. You can do a partial, but for the most part on partials, you're buying 4 to 5 years. Now, if that's what they meant by short-term, fantastic. Yeah, that takes a lot of the risk out of it, because you're a lower investment to value ratio. You've got an investor behind you that's motivated to keep that note working. So yes, if you mean 4 to 5 years short term, great way to go. If you're looking for shorter than that, there's a fund that I'm a part of, all full disclosure there, the Money with Meaning Fund. where you can put money in there, own a portion of a portfolio of a fund, and there's a degree of liquidity where you can take that money out. So if you're looking to park money on the sidelines for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years sort of thing, you might want to consider that. And then you're able to take that money out when you find an opportunity that you're looking for because of liquidity.
Okay.
All right. Kevin, how would you bring in a partner on that last deal analysis that you did, given the skinny nature of the deal? Now, I don't know what they're defining as skinny nature, but I mean, we can read between the lines.
Yeah, and again, the risk on that was that you're paying towards the higher end of some ratios there. Still maybe acceptable. It's not an investment realm for somebody, but when you add in that guarantee for 12 months, it does change it up a little bit in somebody's mind. So what he's looking for is a partner on this where it'll be between those two parties. I mean, what they want to do on this. There's a couple ways somebody could go something on this. Maybe the partner, instead of buying into the note, takes a hypothecation. It means they're going to lend money as a part of this transaction backed by the note. And that way they're not involved in owning the note. They basically have a loan with the note owner here, but the loan's the collateral. That could be a way that something is worked out. Perhaps they just go in 50-50 on the deal. I'll pay half, you pay half. You stay on top of it if things go wrong. Relationship, or maybe somebody comes in, I'll come in with a smaller amount of money. You come in with a larger amount of money, and then if it goes well, I'll buy more. So there's a lot of different options that could be done on this.
What are you seeing? So, this deal, 9% to the borrower, people are asking, how do we know if that rate is acceptable? And are there any usury concerns or guidelines?
Okay. Usury laws are the overall highest interest rate that you can charge in a state, right? We're nowhere near that at 9%, by the way. Most states, look at some of the credit cards that are out there today, 22%, and that sort of thing is not unusual today. So the usury laws are usually much higher interest rate on this. It is something you can glance at, but you can Google that very, very quickly here. The 8 whatever percent it was on the original loan amount is acceptable to these borrowers. How do I know that? Because they agreed. Okay, the borrowers have already closed. They've already put the 23 grand down. They've made one payment, because in August, we weren't ready to pull the trigger on this one. We just weren't. This is one of those deals that initially they're going to create the note and he was going to buy it. But as we started going through this procedure that I did, albeit quickly with you all, we started to get, there's too much risk right now. Let's tap the brakes here and make sure. So now the parties made one payment, the September payment here. And oh, shoot. I think I got off track of your question there, Aaron.
It's okay.
What was hit me one more time so I'll wrap it.
Oh, you got it. It was just going over usury.
Oh, the interest rate. So the interest rate's no problem. They've agreed to it. And again, most of them don't care about the interest. It's what's my payment? Because in their mind, let's face it, they're thinking, look, this gets us in a home. It keeps us in our neighborhood. We want to stay here. We'll refinance down the road. And that's most likely what's going to happen in this scenario.
So we got all this moratorium stuff on evictions. A good friend of mine, next speaker, will be talking a little bit about that as well, on the moratoriums for, does that apply to foreclosure, and can one proceed with foreclosure and just not evict?
Yes. When it comes to, there's a difference between obviously eviction and foreclosure. Let me address foreclosure first. There was not a moratorium for us on foreclosure. There isn't. If you're a bank and you did an FDIC loan that has been purchased by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mae, they can make the rules and say you can't foreclose because it's a government-owned loan. So the government can change those laws. They can't change a note agreement that I have, which is a private agreement with this individual. And that's another reason why we don't have to do forbearance on a seller finance note. We can. Nothing says we have to do that. They can't do that and force that upon us. We're not a part of the Fannie Mae system. So when it comes to foreclosure, The only thing that slows us down, though, is at the local county level. If the local county is saying we're not taking what they deem unnecessary, that's not the proper word, we're not taking certain cases such as foreclosure right now, now you're stuck if it's a judicial foreclosure state. If it's non-judicial, you should be able to proceed. If it's judicial and the courthouses aren't hearing unnecessary cases, then you're a little bit stuck and have to play by their rules at that point in time. So, pardon me. So you just have to be a little sensitive. Am I in a judicial state, non-judicial state? Are the courts open or not? Most courts are starting to hear these foreclosure cases again.
Kevin, most investors generating notes right now, are they through seller financing? Are they listing them on the MLS or like FSBO? What are you seeing?
I didn't hear the beginning. Sorry.
So a lot of investors that are generating notes through seller financing right now, yeah. How are they moving those properties? Are they just listing them on the MLS or FSBO site? Like
good question. You know, I don't know the answer about MLS because I don't really look at that. I think, though, for investors, we want to do things expeditiously, right? And again, and Ben and John, you know, with Odell, they're a classic example of that. They would much rather work with someone that they know, hey, we created these notes, you want to buy them? And they go, boop, 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 yeah, we'll buy them. They would much rather work with that than list it on MLS, get a real estate agent involved, and try to get the maximum price for it. They'd rather, you know, work expeditiously. So I don't think that that's the case where they're putting them through MLS, although I really don't know factually on that. But my suggestion is to, as you're doing research already, it's kind of easy sometimes to identify these REO companies, especially if you're going through paperwork. You know, I showed you, we go through all this paperwork. A lot of times you see the original REO company who bought that property. That's a great way to reverse engineer to find those REO companies and then start to network with them and say, hey, if you have notes that fit this, I'll buy them. Because again, you could build a relationship with one company and have more business than you can handle.
Yeah, I can answer that really quickly. We use mostly Facebook and Craigslist to find people for our seller financed opportunities. We've used the MLS a handful of times. If you've got easy access to it, go ahead and throw it up there. You'll get a lot of leads. Just depends on the property level, but it's almost, I mean, most people, they have direct access to Facebook. It's just much easier. They're finding.
Well, you're talking about, Ben, you're talking about finding borrowers or people who want to buy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that not the question?
Okay. I was talking about I was talking about how we find these REO companies. Maybe I misunderstood. I don't know. One way or another. I was specifically, everybody, talking about how do you find these people that are creating these nodes.
And we answered it on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can find people owner financing deals, they've got other notes that you could probably buy. So that's easy. All right, cool. Kevin, that was amazing, man. Thank you so much. We are running a little bit over, so y'all are going to have to grab a Hot Pocket or something, throw it in your microwave, and, you know, come back and because we're going to just trudge forward. But thank you so much, Kevin. That was great. Anybody wants to connect with Kevin, do so. Kevin at kevinshortell.com, on social media, all that good stuff. He's the bomb.
Absolutely.
That's why we love it.
That was fun. All right.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.